Now, Joe Biden's victory in last month's US presidential election is now official. States across the nation have been confirming their electoral college votes. Mr. Biden sealed his win with 306 votes to incumbent Donald Trump's 232. Trump and some of his most ardent supporters still refuse to acknowledge defeat. But after the electoral college vote, several senior Republicans publicly urged their party to accept the election results. In a speech on Monday evening, Mr. Biden offered his strongest criticism yet of President Trump, accusing him of an abuse of power. But in the end, Biden said democracy prevailed.
We, the people, voted. Faith in our institutions held. The integrity of our elections remains intact. And now it's time to turn the page, as we've done throughout our history, to unite, to heal. As I said in this campaign, I will be president for all Americans. I'll work just as hard for those of you who didn't vote for me as I will for those who did.
Well, let's find out more and head to Washington, D.C. to speak to our reporter, Colin Campbell. Colin, very good morning to you. So Joe Biden is really praising American democracy, but also warning that those institutions that uphold it were pushed to their limits. Is this battle for democracy sort of over? And has President Trump now finally accepted defeat and conceded?
Good morning, Rosie. Well, as you can imagine, that the American psyche right now is a little bit fractured when it comes to democracy. Even though the president-elect says that democracy should be celebrated and not attacked, we still have a very divided country when it comes to the outcome of the election. And we know that the current president has tried to leverage his followers. Remember, there was a record-breaking number of Americans who voted in this election, about tens of millions, more than 70 million voting for the president himself. And he's going to try to use this support for future activism, if you will. At the same time, the president-elect wants to bring people together, but it might be very difficult when you have a current president who may be undermining those efforts with constant tweeting. Suffice it to say, Twitter says that it will hand over the presidential handle from the current president to President-elect Biden on Inauguration Day, taking away some of the president's megaphone, if you will, and we'll see what happens after that. But we can't imagine that the current president will continue to keep tweeting as much as he can and reaching out to his supporters as much as he can.
One of course, the most pressing issues for Joe Biden will be handling the coronavirus pandemic. And there were two very significant milestones yesterday. 300,000 deaths reported from COVID-19 in the US, but also the first vaccination given out. What is Joe Biden's plan to try and rein in this COVID pandemic?
That's right. A very grim milestone at that, Rosie. But at the same time, there is hope. And one of the ICU nurses in New York received a vaccine. And she says that she does feel that healing is coming. At the same time, some of these vaccines were distributed to major cities throughout the country, in Dallas, also in Los Angeles, and they were also put out to 149 drop sites to start the vaccination process. There is a limited amount of time that these vaccines can last without being injected into someone, so doctors are moving very quickly to get them out to the frontline nurses and doctors, also the elderly and those on a special list who will receive the vaccine before the general population.
Colin, thank you very much. Our reporter there in Washington, D.C.